Good evening. In this presentation, I want to explore the reason why we believe communal discernment is so important to our parish life. In their book, Resident Alien, Life in the Christian Colony, authors Stanley Hauerwas and William Willimon pinpoint the end of the final vestiges of the Protestant Church's arbitration of American culture as occurring in Greenville, South Carolina in 1963, when the Fox Theater decided to defy South Carolina's blue laws by staying open on Sunday. Now, this was an important milestone in a very, very long process of economic, social, and cultural change, which actually has its roots in the Age of Enlightenment. Because beginning with the Age of Enlightenment, lines of demarcation began to develop between the sacred on one hand, which was restricted to the personal, the private, and the subjective, and the secular on the other hand, which included the social, the public, and the objective. And in response to this new developing and evolving worldview, theological schools of thought began to take shape that accommodated this diminished role of the church in society. Now, one key figure in this process, in this development, was Adolf von Harnack, one of the most important Protestant theologians of the early 1800s. In a series of lectures given at the University of Berlin entitled The Essence of Christianity, von Harnack spoke about a theology of religious individualism. In describing the kingdom of God, he made the claim that, quote, "The kingdom of God is indeed God's rule, but it is the rule of a holy God in individual hearts. Just as the reign of God occurs only in the individual, not in the community, so too it affects only the internal, not the external, the inner man, the soul." Now, this religious individualism found expression in Protestant and evangelical denominations through this emphasis on saving souls for Jesus, which became paramount for many Protestant and evangelical churches. In the Catholic Church, this turn to religious individualism often, not always, but often, found expression in pietistic practices and rituals that provided ways for the individual to get on good terms with God. Now, this religious individualism took root in the context of the development of free market economic systems, free market capitalism in particular. At the heart of this economic system is the belief that when individuals pursue their own self-interest in the marketplace, everybody benefits. Right? Over time, the interlocking institutions that shape, define, promote, sustain our free market system have created a common culture, right, that serves to legitimate the values, the beliefs, the practices, and the outcomes of this system. Now, the ascendancy of free market consumer culture and the rise of religious individualism have been so subtle that we're often unaware of how profoundly it has changed the role of the church in society and how it has shaped the ways that most parishes function. Within their limited role of providing religious goods and services in the marketplace, successful parishes are the ones who are able to increase their market share by providing better goods and services than the church down the road. And following the logic of the market, the primary goal of most parish renewal programs is to do church better. The hope is that if a parish can do church better, it can get more people in the pews. Evangelism in this worldview is more often about effective messaging that often mimics the methods and methodologies of many of the ad men who have created some of our most famous consumer icons. This results in a form of evangelization that makes very few demands and primarily is focused on the benefits of membership. Often, pastoral ministry and adult formation programs also can become tied to the market. Find out what they want and then give them what they ask for. Now, the problem with this approach is this. If we treat our parishioners like customers, they're going to behave like customers. When asked to evaluate their parish, customers will talk about what they like or what they don't like about the products and services that are provided. Parish loyalty for many of these customers can also be market-driven. What do I get in return for my investment of time and money in this parish? And even decisions about participating in parish life can also become market-driven. Among all the choices I have in the marketplace, what experience or activity gives me the most of what I desire this weekend? Over time, many parishioners began to see themselves not as members of a discipleship community, but as a collection of individuals who share common beliefs and practices with others. Now, for a long time, this accommodation to religious individualism and free market consumer culture worked. It worked because there was a strong social expectation that enforced this notion that becoming a respectable adult in society meant being a member of a faith community. This is certainly no longer the case. There used to be also a strong consensus that society should allot space and time for church-related activities. And as any soccer mom or soccer dad can tell you, this certainly is no longer the case. In his book, The Present Future, 6 Tough Questions for the Church, author Reggie McNeil sums up the current crisis that we face. Quote, "The current church culture in North America is on life support. It's living off the work, money, and energy of previous generations from a previous world order. The plug will be pulled either when the money runs out. 80% of the money given to congregations comes from people 55 years and older, or when the remaining institutional loyalists all die off." Now, there are numerous studies and polls that bear out McNeil's observations. A 2008 study by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life reported that almost one half of Catholics consider themselves as unaffiliated. A 2012 analysis by the Pew Research Center found that the share of all Catholics who say they attend Mass at least once a week has dropped from 47% in 1974 to just 24% in 2012. Probably the most consequential statistical trend in the U.S. Catholic Church is the massive losses of 2 successive generations of Catholics. Many of these young people still believe in God and are deeply moved by the teachings of Jesus. But young people can sniff out hypocrisy from a mile away. And many are quick to point out the hypocrisy of churches that are more interested in condemning those they consider as outsiders or outcasts than embracing the life and the teachings of Jesus. Young people find it hard to square the teachings of Jesus with what they perceive is happening in the churches. But I believe that beneath the charges of hypocrisy, there is a longing for authenticity and a longing for integrity. All people, but especially young people, hunger for authenticity and integrity. And with so much duplicity, moral compromises, fake news, fake politicians, fake business leaders, and even fake church people, Trust in all institutions among young people is at an all-time low. These young people who identify themselves as spiritual seekers look upon the church and they ask, why? Why should I become a church person like you? When they see a church more concerned with judgment than with mercy, they wonder, is there any room for Jesus in your church? They want to know, what has your faith cost you? They want to see, how has your parish made a difference in the lives of the poor, in the lives of the outcast? And they want to know, is everybody welcome in your church? Pope Francis talks about the importance of attraction over proselytizing. So maybe a church that is humble in its own self-assessments, honest in its efforts to match its words with its deeds, and committed to the costly discipleship of Jesus Christ, is a church where young people can feel at home. For those who still cling to the free market parish consumer culture, the challenges posed by this loss of young people in our church is usually framed by the question, how can we keep or bring back young people to the church? But for those who desire to live in a community, a Catholic Christian community, whose singular focus is on discerning and doing God's will, this challenge is posed by a different question. And that question is this: how can we become the kind of parish community that is worthy of our children's commitment?